Today is February 28th, 2026, and Marco Rubio just changed the entire shape of this confrontation with a single sentence. Speaking to reporters from a departure lounge at an airport in St. Kitts and Nevis, the United States Secretary of State said something that no senior American official had stated with that level of directness in public before. He said that beyond Iran's nuclear program, Iran possesses conventional weapons that are solely designed to attack America and attack Americans, not designed to threaten Israel, not designed to threaten Europe, not designed to project regional power, solely designed to attack America. And then he called Iran's refusal to even discuss those weapons a big, big problem. The repetition of the word big was not accidental. Rubio is a precise communicator. He said big twice because he wanted people to hear it twice. And he was right to want that, because what he revealed in those two sentences, combined with everything that has emerged in the past 72 hours about Iran's secret missile architecture, its underground cities of ballistic weapons, its satellite launch program that is an ICBM program barely disguised in civilian clothing, and its explicit refusal to place any of it on any negotiating table anywhere, is that the confrontation between Washington and Tehran is not just about uranium enrichment percentages and centrifuge counts. It is about a sovereign nation that has spent 4 decades and a staggering share of its broken economy building a weapons system with one declared purpose: to be able to kill Americans on American soil, and it is now telling the most powerful military force in human history to go negotiate with someone else about that. Start with what Rubio actually knows and what the public record now confirms, because the missile program Rubio is describing is not an intelligence abstraction. It is a physical, documented, operational reality that has been growing systematically since the day Iran's nuclear program first became a Western concern, and it has continued growing through every sanction, every strike, every diplomatic round, and every American ultimatum ever delivered. Iran's ballistic missile arsenal, according to the most recent assessments, contains over 3,000 missiles. 3,000. That number represents the largest ballistic missile stockpile in the entire Middle East, by a margin so large that no other regional actor is even in the same category of discussion. This arsenal includes short-range ballistic missiles, with ranges between 300 and 1,000 kilometers covering every American base in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, Jordan, and the UAE. It includes medium-range ballistic missiles with ranges between 1,000 and 3,000 kilometers covering all of Israel, all of Saudi Arabia, all of Turkey, most of Europe, and significant portions of the broader region. An Iranian parliament member from the Commission on National Security and Foreign Policy stated publicly that major American cities, including Washington, D.C., are within range of Iranian medium-range ballistic missiles. Iran has never officially contradicted that statement. And beyond the numbers, the technical evolution of these weapons over the past 5 years represents a generational leap that changes what American missile defense systems can realistically do against them. The Shahab series was where Iran started. Simple liquid-fueled ballistic missiles derived from North Korean Scud technology in the 1980s, bought with Iran-Iraq war desperation money, reverse-engineered in underground facilities over the following decade into a family of weapons capable of reaching about 1,300 kilometers. Those were the missiles of a regional power asserting itself. What Iran builds now is something qualitatively different. The Khaybar-Shekin, unveiled in February 2022, is a solid-fuel medium-range ballistic missile with a precision strike capability and a range of 1,450 kilometers. The fact that it is solid-fueled matters enormously and gets almost no public attention in coverage of these talks. Liquid-fueled missiles require hours of fueling before launch, during which satellite imagery can detect the preparation and allow adversaries time to respond. Solid-fueled missiles are stored ready to fire, can be launched from mobile transporter erector launchers in minutes, and can be dispersed across hundreds of locations simultaneously with no advance warning visible from space. The shift from liquid to solid fuel in Iran's program is not a technical footnote. It is a strategic revolution in Iran's ability to launch a surprise mass salvo against American assets. The Fatah-1, unveiled with enormous ceremony in June 2023 at an IRGC event attended by senior commanders and the Iranian president at the time, was introduced to the world as a hypersonic missile. Iran claimed it could travel at Mach 15, 15 times the speed of sound, with a range of 1,400 kilometers, and that its maneuvering reentry vehicle made it impossible for existing missile defense systems to intercept. Independent analysts at the International Institute for Strategic Studies reviewed the technical specifications and concluded that the Fatah is not precisely a hypersonic glide vehicle in the Western classification sense, but rather a medium-range ballistic missile with a second stage that incorporates a maneuverable reentry vehicle capable of in-flight course correction and exo-atmospheric maneuvering. In plain terms, it can change direction as it comes down. Iron Dome does not stop it. Patriot batteries struggle with it. The Arrow system faces a challenge from it, and Iran unveiled the Fatah II, a more advanced variant with enhanced hypersonic glide characteristics and extended range, just 5 months later in November 2023. The Khorramshahr IV, known by Iran as the K-Bar, a name taken from a 7th century Islamic military victory over Jewish tribes and displayed at its unveiling next to a miniature model of Jerusalem's Temple Mount, has a range of 2,000 kilometers, carries a 1,500-kilogram payload, can be launched from truck-mounted mobile systems, and reportedly reaches speeds of Mach 8 during reentry. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom conducted their own technical modeling and concluded one variant of the Khorramshahr could actually reach 3,000 kilometers with a lighter warhead, which would classify it as an intermediate-range ballistic missile crossing a threshold of strategic significance under international arms control frameworks. That missile was deployed in underground bases for the first time just weeks ago in February 2026, according to reports from Iran's state-affiliated Fars news agency, even as the Geneva talks were being announced. Now hear Rubio's words again. Solely designed to attack America and attack Americans. And then understand what those words mean when placed next to a specific set of numbers. Rubio told American lawmakers in a classified briefing reported by the Wall Street Journal that Iranian missiles can reach approximately 9 bases where American forces are currently stationed. 9 American bases, all within range of a system comprising what Rubio called thousands of Iranian drones and short-range ballistic missiles, 30 to 40,000 American service members at those bases, not as an estimate or a theoretical risk, as a current, present, operational targeting reality that exists today, right now, while the Geneva talks are still technically ongoing, and while Trump's deadline is still technically in effect. Rubio was not making a political argument about a hypothetical future threat. He was describing the current posture of the Iranian military relative to the current deployment of the American military. Iran has already distributed weapons capable of killing thousands of American troops across missile bases in all of its provinces. The IRGC has what it calls missile cities, underground launch complexes built into mountains and beneath desert floors, some reportedly at depths of 500 meters. At the start of the June 2025 12-day war with Israel, the IRGC had approximately 480 transporter Erector launchers for its ballistic missiles. By the end of those 12 days, after Israel exploited semi-permissive Iranian airspace to strike launchers still on the surface, the IRGC had roughly 100 remaining, which means 380 launchers were destroyed in 12 days of the most intensive Israeli air operations since the Six-Day War. And Iran's response to losing 79% of its surface-based launch capability was to immediately begin importing the precursor materials to build new missiles and harden the underground infrastructure that survived. In February 2025, shipping data and maritime intelligence tracking confirmed the arrival of 1,000 metric tons of sodium perchlorate at Bandar Abbas, one of the critical solid fuel propellant precursors needed to manufacture medium-range ballistic missiles. A shipment of that size is sufficient to supply propellant for several hundred new solid fuel missiles. The quantities were large enough that American Special Forces conducted a covert interdiction operation in December 2025, raiding a merchant ship in the Indian Ocean carrying military cargo from China to Iran, specifically intended for the IRGC's missile reconstruction program. That operation stopped one shipment. The broader rebuilding continues regardless. Rubio expressed something close to incredulity when he spoke about this to reporters. He said he was astonished that Iran could find the money to invest in missiles of greater and greater capacity every year despite facing sanctions, with an economy in tatters and a population that is suffering. That astonishment, coming from one of the most informed foreign policy minds in the current American government, reveals the depth of the strategic miscalculation that has driven American Iran policy across multiple administrations. The assumption behind every round of sanctions, every diplomatic deadline, every maximum pressure campaign has been that economic pain translates into military constraint, that if you make a country poor enough, it cannot afford to build weapons. Iran has spent 4 decades disproving that assumption with methodical precision. When the Iranian government sits down to write its budget, the IRGC and the missile program are not line items subject to austerity. The IRGC's core budget allocation for the year March 2025 to March 2026 was 199 trillion tomans, compared to the conventional military's 80 trillion. The IRGC also received separate crude oil quota allocations worth an additional 63 trillion tomans. Special military and security projects added more on top of that. The IRGC's total visible budget is approximately $6 billion, nearly double the conventional military's allocation, and that is the visible budget. The IRGC also operates its own parallel economy of front companies, construction conglomerates, petrochemical interests, and off-budget revenue streams that make the official figures a floor, not a ceiling. Iran's intelligence ministry budget was increased by 67% in the 2025 budget cycle, even as public hospitals ran out of medicine and 80% of Iranian pharmacies faced bankruptcy from currency collapse. The missile program runs on the same principle. The Iranian people go hungry. The rial loses 40% of its remaining value in 6 months. Inflation runs at 60% by some independent estimates. And somewhere underneath a mountain in Loristan province, or buried in the desert floor in Semnan, an IRGC Aerospace Force technician is installing another solid fuel motor into another medium-range ballistic missile casing and moving it into a tunnel built specifically to survive the exact kind of attack that American B-2 bombers delivered last June. This is the reality behind what Trump described in his State of the Union address on February 24th. Standing before a joint session of Congress, Trump said, Iran is working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America. The word soon generated immediate pushback from American intelligence officials who spoke anonymously to NBC News and CNN. They pointed to a 2025 Defense Intelligence Agency assessment that concluded Iran could develop a militarily viable intercontinental ballistic missile by 2035, if Tehran decided to pursue the capability. 10 years, not soon. And Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi gave an interview to India Today in which he stated directly that Iran had deliberately limited the range of its missiles to 2,000 kilometers and that the missiles were for defense. Iran denied having any ICBM program. The Iranian government's foreign ministry spokesman called Trump's State of the Union claims full of big lies. The gap between Trump saying soon and the DIA saying 2035 is significant, and the intelligence community's public pushback against a sitting president's national security claims is itself an extraordinary and rarely discussed event. But here is what makes both the Trump claim and the DIA timeline somewhat beside the immediate strategic point. Iran does not need an ICBM to kill Americans. Iran already has the missiles to kill the 30,000 to 40,000 Americans sitting at 9 bases within current range right now today. And Iran's space program, which every serious Western analyst, including the U.S. Strategic Command's own 2025 posture statement, describes as an ICBM development program running under civilian cover, is advancing the technological building blocks for longer-range capability, regardless of which public timeline one accepts. The QAM-100 space launch vehicle, developed by the IRGC and using an all-solid propellant 3-stage design, successfully launched the Soraya satellite in January 2024. A 2019 U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency report stated explicitly that Iran's development of space launch vehicles can be used as a test bed for developing an intercontinental ballistic missile. The U.S. Stratcom Commander General Cotton highlighted in the 2025 posture statement that Iran's work on space launch vehicles would shorten the timeline to produce an ICBM due to similarities in technology. The only technical difference between a space launch vehicle and an intercontinental ballistic missile is the payload. One carries a satellite on a trajectory that does not return to Earth. The other carries a warhead on a trajectory designed to detonate over a target. The booster technology, the staging dynamics, the propulsion engineering, the guidance systems, the atmospheric reentry physics for the warhead variant, all of it is built on the same knowledge base and the same manufacturing infrastructure. Iran is not trying to launch satellites for weather data and telecommunications. Iran is building the rocket science that one morning becomes the ICBM capability that Rubio says is already on its way. Iran plans to launch the first satellites in a new constellation named after Qasem Soleimani, the IRGC commander killed in the American drone strike in 2020 by March 2026. Named after the man America killed to set back Iranian regional ambitions, launched using technology that American intelligence agencies say is the path to an ICBM. While the Geneva talks are still technically active, Iran has also been described in January 2026 reports as possibly having conducted a test of a missile system with a claimed range of 10,000 kilometers, which would make it intercontinental by definition. Iranian parliamentarian Mohsen Zanganeh made a televised statement acknowledging what he described as a security test of an intercontinental range missile. Iranian state media initially circulated the claim before parts of the apparatus denied it. No independent confirmation from Western intelligence has been publicly released. But the convergence of commercial satellite imagery showing unusual launch activity at the Imam Khomeini spaceport in September 2025, the parliamentary statement, and the unveiling of a missile called the Khorramshahr-5 in July 2025, with a claimed range of 12,000 kilometers, forced Western defense planners to reassess timelines. The Khorramshahr-5 claim, if real, represents a range sufficient to reach the continental United States from Iranian soil without needing a fully developed ICBM program. Whether Iran has achieved genuine intercontinental capability or is engaged in deliberate deterrence by ambiguity, the strategic effect on Washington's decision calculus is identical. The threat is real enough to force a response, vague enough to resist definitive technical refutation. This is the context in which Rubio's statement that Iran's conventional weapons are solely designed to attack America and attack Americans lands with the force it deserves. Because what Rubio was also implicitly acknowledging is that the Geneva negotiations, the third round of which just ended without a deal, are not addressing the weapons that are already pointed at Americans right now. The nuclear talks were about enrichment, centrifuges, uranium stockpiles, and verification mechanisms. They were not about the 3,000 missile arsenal. They were not about the Fatah 1 with its maneuvering reentry vehicle. They were not about the Khorramshahr 4 deployed in underground bases for the first time this month. They were not about the Chem 100 and the ICBM knowledge it represents. Iran's position on the missile program was stated with absolute clarity by Foreign Minister Araghchi before, during, and after the Geneva talks. The ballistic missile program is not on the negotiating table. It is not subject to discussion. It is not negotiable. It is a red line. Araghchi said this publicly. Iranian state television broadcast it. Supreme Leader Khamenei's senior advisor posted it on social media. The missile program is the one piece of Iranian capability that survived the June 2025 war most intact precisely because it is the most dispersed, the most hardened, the most buried, and the most institutionally protected component of Iran's entire military architecture. And that brings you to the strategic revelation that changes everything about how this confrontation must now be understood. The missile program is not a side issue to the nuclear program that happens to sit in the same country and share some engineering personnel. The missile program and the nuclear program are two halves of the same strategic weapon. A nuclear weapon without a delivery system capable of reaching its target is a device. A delivery system without a nuclear warhead is a conventional strike capability. Put them together, and you have the most powerful deterrent in the history of human strategic competition. Iran has been building both halves simultaneously for decades, and the reason Iran refuses to discuss the missile program in nuclear talks is not because it is irrelevant to nuclear discussions. It is because the missile program is the nuclear program's insurance policy, its delivery guarantee, its second strike capability, and without it, the nuclear program loses most of its deterrent value, even if the enrichment capability is eventually restored. Asking Iran to give up its ballistic missiles in exchange for nuclear limits is asking Iran to surrender the only strategic asset it has that Washington demonstrably fears. Because conventional military strikes on Iranian missile cities carry a casualty risk to American troops that has already caused General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, to flag concerns in internal meetings about entanglement and the risk of American deaths. The financial picture behind the missile program answers Rubio's expressed astonishment about how Iran keeps funding it. The IRGC does not operate on the same budget as the Iranian public health system. The IRGC runs a parallel state economy with construction companies, petrochemical interests, front companies across Turkey, UAE, and China, and off-budget revenue streams that are specifically described in Iranian budget documents as lacking transparency and oversight. When international sanctions reduce oil revenue to what the Iranian government can actually spend, the portion allocated to IRGC weapons programs is politically protected in a way that hospital funding and pension payments are not. Iranian police officers were caught on viral video in 2026 describing their own severe financial hardship, saying many of their colleagues drive for ride-hailing apps to cover basic living expenses. The police cannot afford groceries. The IRGC can afford solid propellant ballistic missiles. That is not an accident. It is a structural priority decision made at the highest levels of the Islamic Republic that reflects exactly what the regime considers its non-negotiable survival requirements. The nuclear program and the missile program are in one category. Everything else, including the welfare of the Iranian people, is in another. Trump's response to Rubio's revelation about missiles designed solely to strike America was to echo it at the State of the Union level and then send his negotiating team to Geneva anyway. That sequence exposes the central contradiction at the heart of American strategy right now. You cannot publicly declare that a country has weapons solely designed to kill your citizens, assemble the largest military force in the region in 20 years, set a deadline with consequences, watch that deadline pass, send diplomats to negotiate only the nuclear component while the missile program continues expanding under a different category of protected activity, and then describe the outcome as maximum pressure working. The pressure is not working in the way it was designed to work. What it has produced is a negotiating theater in Geneva about enrichment percentages, while the actual weapons Rubio identified as solely designed to kill Americans are being moved into underground mountain bases in real time. Iran began the 12-day war in June 2025 with 480 mobile missile launchers. It ended with 100. It has spent the subsequent 8 months importing propellant precursors, rebuilding production facilities, and hardening the underground infrastructure that survived. The missile program that Rubio called a big problem did not pause for the Geneva talks. It accelerated during them. This is what changes everything about the current strategic picture. The nuclear talks in Geneva were always framed as the primary arena for resolving the Iranian threat. Every American ultimatum, every carrier strike group, Every B-2 at Diego Garcia was theoretically backstopping a diplomatic push to get Iran to constrain or eliminate its nuclear program. But Rubio just told the world that the nuclear program is one of two problems, and the second one, the conventional missile program, is not on any table anywhere, and Iran has explicitly said it will never be. A limited nuclear deal that caps enrichment for 3 to 5 years, while Iran continues expanding a ballistic missile arsenal of over 3,000 weapons, deploying new systems with maneuvering reentry vehicles designed to defeat American and Israeli missile defenses, building underground cities of launchers, and advancing satellite launch technology toward intercontinental range, would produce a world in which the nuclear threat is temporarily constrained and the delivery mechanism threat has grown substantially larger. It would be the worst possible outcome for American security dressed up as diplomatic success, and Iran knows this, which is precisely why Iran is willing to negotiate about the nuclear program while declaring the missile program permanently off the table. The offer is designed to look like a concession while preserving and expanding the one capability that Washington's own Secretary of State just confirmed is designed solely to kill Americans. Where this leaves Trump is in the most constrained strategic position of the entire confrontation. He has an armada, he has deadlines passing, he has an economy in Iran that is genuinely collapsing with inflation above 60%, a rial worth less than 100,000th of a dollar, 80% of pharmacies facing bankruptcy, and 30,000 citizens reportedly killed in a protest crackdown in January. He has a Geneva process that just produced no deal on the nuclear program and no discussion whatsoever of the missile program. And he has his own Secretary of State publicly stating that the missiles Iran refuses to discuss are solely designed to attack Americans. The pressure, the diplomacy, the military presence, the economic strangulation, and the negotiations have all combined to produce a situation where Iran's nuclear program is rebuilding underground and Iran's missile program is expanding in parallel, both with explicit IRGC institutional priority, both with Chinese supply chain support, both with North Korean technical cooperation, and both protected from the only leverage America has been willing to apply, which is economic, by an IRGC financial structure that operates off the books and is specifically designed to be insulated from the same sanctions that are starving Iranian police officers. The weapons solely designed to kill Americans are growing more numerous, more accurate, more survivable, and closer to intercontinental range. And the country building them just told the world's most powerful military that it will not discuss them. Not in Geneva, not in Vienna, not anywhere. That is what Rubio just exposed. And that changes everything about what comes next.